What's up, everyone? How we doing this week? Back to it for another week. I had a couple of weeks off just because I have some pretty major stuff going on, which I'm sure in the future, once everything kind of gets finalized, I'll be able to speak more about that. But for now, I'm back to it. So after 3 weeks off, decided to jump on here and do another podcast, and probably going to be a pretty quick one, but this is just about why I feel movement is so important. And you can take that word movement in a lot of different aspects, but today I'm really talking about like moving your body and training because we there's been a lot of stuff happening, and it's gotten to a point where it's taken a pretty heavy emotional toll on myself, to a point where I kind of broke down, uh, not last week, but the week before, where I just needed to cry and just emotionally release everything. And and it kind of got to that point because of everything that's happened, but also I kind of felt like I got to that point, firstly, because I wasn't coping with everything and I wasn't processing anything really well. But I also wasn't able to move for a whole week, wasn't able to train. I shouldn't say I wasn't able to. There was times during that week where I chose not to, like I put it on the back burner because I felt like there was more important things to be doing. And then I ended up getting sick, and my son ended up with gastro. And then most people that are listening to this have kids, so you kind of know how it goes down. The kid gets something from daycare, and then all of a sudden, over the course of the next week and a half, 2 weeks, everyone in the house gets it. And that's kind of what happened with us, or me. Luckily, my wife and my daughter managed to stay away from it, well, it seems like. But my son and I both got it. And towards the end of the week, that kind of stopped me from really doing any form of physical activity. But with everything that's going on, obviously, this isn't a podcast about not crying and things like that. I think it's important to process your emotions and let them out, in a constructive way, and deal with it, which I have. And that's one of the reasons why I'm back on this podcast, because and probably one of the reasons why I was avoiding doing it, because I hadn't really, there was things that I needed to deal with internally before I really got on here and spoke about what was going on. But not moving for a week, for me, made everything exponentially worse, I feel, because even though we do need to take time to deal with emotionally what's going on, and consistently moving and running away from our emotions and what's going on is not a healthy way to deal with it and can get it to the point where it explodes. But even the movement side of things, for me, and this is for me, this is what works for me. It works for a lot of other people that I work with, because a lot of them have a very similar personality type to me. It's not going to be for everybody, but with the movement thing, by putting it off, it meant that my ability to deal with everything was diminished. And even though the movement side of things didn't make everything go away, it did make me feel better about where I was at. And after my minor breakdown, my kind of release of what was going on, I went and I started training again. And I didn't do anything complicated. I didn't overthink it. Those of you that have followed me, whether you follow like my personal account on social media, or you follow the gym account, or you follow, the Unstoppable Dad Project, will have seen that I'm a pretty big advocate for not overcomplicating things, right? Like, I think that from the point of view of like training, it has to be to a point where you don't have to think about it. You have to have everything set up for yourself so you can just go and action it. Because as soon as you start putting complications in the way, this is what I was doing. I wasn't putting physical complications in the way. I was putting mental complications in the way. And that's a whole other topic. But we need to have things so streamlined to a point so that we can just go and action it. And so I went and I moved on the Wednesday, and I wasn't immediately after I did that session, but over the course of the next few hours, I started to feel a little bit better about things. And that allowed me to step back and kind of process what was going on and take a little bit more of a bird's eye view. And then I started to resume, even though it wasn't normal training. I got back to jiu-jitsu after a week off, And things started to, even though the overall issue hadn't have been solved, my ability to deal with it was a lot more streamlined. And I guess the point of telling that story is you need to find something that is going to allow you to decompress. And I love my family, I love my kids, and they are one way where if I'm playing with my kids, it feels like all the troubles in the world wash away. But as much as I love being with them and my wife, spending that time for myself to work on myself, which is removed from the problem, gave me an opportunity to kind of reset, refocus, and then address what was going on internally so I could better address what was going on externally. And I think we all need to do that. We all need to have something. For me, it's movement. For a lot of people I know, it's movement, it's training. And there's a lot of people that I talk to that don't really know what that thing is. They don't know what it is. They don't know what they should be doing. For some people, I know it's meditation. For others, it's breathing. For others, it's jumping, like it's going for a swim, going for a jog. You need to find something for you that allows you to refocus, recalibrate, and then tackle emotionally what's going on internally so that the factors externally are more easily able to be looked at objectively. And that was one thing I forgot. Even after all these years of owning a gym, even after all these years of training, I mean, I've been training in some way, shape, or form since I was 15 years old. That's like with weights and things like that, not including sports. Like I've been playing sports since I was very young. But so, for as long as I can remember, like doing something physical has been a big part of my life. And so that's why for me, like that grounding process for me is actually going and doing something physical. And the workout that I did on Wednesday was literally just, I sat on the assault bike for 20 minutes and then I sat on the roller for 20 minutes. It wasn't going and lifting, doing a 3RM for a back squat or doing any overcomplicated program. It was just doing something that got my heart rate up a little bit, that got me sweating a little bit. And that in turn helped me feel better about my ability to address the situation. As I said, movement isn't going to be a cure-all for everything. There are still going to be things that you are going to need to address, both internally and externally. But for me, over the process and over the things that I have gone through over it's probably last 4 to 6 months, the times where I have not moved and I have not done something physical, my ability to process everything is diminished greatly. It helps me think clearer. It helps me address my emotions internally better. And in turn, that helps me not only just personally, but it helps me help the people around me. There's a saying that you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to spend some time on yourself. And as much as I think as dads and as parents, we will say like family time's important to us. It is, don't get me wrong. And as I said, the time I have with my family, when I'm actually focused in on what I'm doing with them and I'm in the moment with them, it is like the weight of the world does wash away when the kids are smiling and everybody's laughing and we're all happy and we're enjoying each other's company. That is a way for me to escape, but it doesn't help my ability to address the situation. It keeps me determined to do better. But the thing for me that helps me address my internal feelings and helps me address the situation externally is that movement piece, is going and doing something physical. As I said, this isn't everyone needs to do this because everyone will be different. This is just what works for me. And the biggest thing I think that people, if we're going down just the movement path, a lot of people think that they need to overcomplicate that side of things. And especially if you're starting out, if you feel like the walls are caving in, if you feel like everyone's against you and the world's against you, it's probably not a good idea to go and start some elaborate strength program, especially if it's not something that you've done for 3 or 4 years. Potentially, the best way to do things is maybe start off with just some walking. Just go and get out in nature, walk for 30 minutes. That might be a power walk. If you're able to, maybe it's a light jog or a run. Maybe it's even just going to the gym and sitting on the rower or the bike or the treadmill for 30 or 40 minutes. But getting out there, moving and doing something for yourself and spending that time on you, for me, the movement piece has been important. For others, it may look different. Might even be yoga. Like jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is a hard one. And I've kind of done a previous podcast on the benefits I've seen from that. And I really think everyone should give it a go because it really gives you an insight into yourself. But if you are at a point where you kind of feel like the world is caving in, depending on your personality type, starting something like that may not be a good move. It might be, but it might not be. So it's about finding what's right for you. And that statement in itself will overcomplicate it for a lot of people. But try and move, try and breathe, try and find something. You may have to try a few things to actually find your thing. But the big thing is, I believe, if you don't know what the next step is, go and ask for help. Whether that be, if it's looking for help around movement and training, you can reach out to me. If it's physical help, if it's mental help, going and seeing a professional. Reach out for help, because I read a saying this week, which really resonated with me in the situation that I'm in. And I think it was on a post and someone was doing they were doing one of those 30 things I've learned from XYZ. And halfway down the list, they put, people want to help you, but you only have to ask. And that's one thing I'm really bad at. I'm really bad at asking for help. And I know as males, our pride stops us in asking for help. But when you ask for it, there will be plenty of people out there in your circle that will want to help. You just have to be ready to receive that help. So find your thing to help you move, help you get grounded and get centered so that you can address the internal and external issues that need to be addressed to help you move forward, to help you serve others better, to help you be a better husband and father. Because if you don't look after yourself first, everything else is going to seem like it's a mountain that's very hard to climb. Hopefully that helps. Hope everyone's going well. It's a tough time for everybody at the moment. And some of us have it tougher than others. It's not to diminish what we're all going through, but it is the reality of it. So if you need help, as always, reach out. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. If you find some value from this, share it around with your friends. If you are not already, subscribe on the podcast channels so you're notified when it's dropped. The video version of this is also on YouTube. So thanks again for listening, and I will try and be back for another podcast next week. All right, bye now. See ya.